you guys think that that's doable at this point.
No, no, I'm trying to say that we should do it. I just want to make sure that we're not
Oh, okay. Got it.
doing something that other people in the community would be, be against, because we have made a previous commitment that we should start it. We just never said when we should start it, so I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything that would be controversial. But if no one thinks it's controversial, then we should just
I think I
postpone
think
that.
messaging wise,
Yeah.
because I think if somebody feels that way, I think that's a valid concern. If they say, "Hey, you said you were going to do this, but now you're doing this," I see these as separate, and that one complements the other. I see the yield group as community approved stewarding of the funds to make them bigger, so that when people do decide, when the community does decide how the funding rounds are going to go, the Treasury is hopefully in a better place than it was going in. So I don't see it as an alternative or as a deciding not to do the other in any way. And I would hope if we end up having those conversations, like explaining it like that. If anybody saw it different, let me know. But again, to me, this is putting the funds somewhere so that hopefully they have 5 to 10 to 20% more come time when it's time to start doling out funds to appropriate places. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, then I think we can just postpone funding rounds for now until someone brings it up and asks should we start it, and then we can have a discussion about that. So then we should just make a proposal that asks to take all of the funds to yield farming.
I agree.
I think the time will be
pointing out that this is not a deployment of funds. So I think the messaging is important around that. We're not deploying these funds to another place that prevents us from doing funding rounds. Like I think we should get in front of those concerns as we describe what the proposal is that we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Liberty.
Yeah, and that does make sense. And I was just gonna say, I think it'll become pretty obvious when the right time is to move forward with pushing funding rounds. Once host to host is up and running, once we're looking clearly at burn mint and the protocol has been revealed to the world, and developers start to understand what this all means for their projects and for the ecosystem. Then people will be able to crystallize concrete projects that, in some way, the community might want to help out if nobody else is. But it's the time for that's not quite there yet. There may be something to be said for assisting with minor integrations or onboarding of more fringe type tokens. But I haven't seen anything yet to indicate that there's strong community support for any of the suggestions that have been made. So we've talked about this for quite a while. Just the idea of putting our dead equity to use here, or spare funds, or whatever you want to call it. So I think we should go ahead and propose that and get a strategy enacted. Although I do think long term we're going to want to look at the yield strategies, as part of a broader allocation, and not the whole of it. But we've talked about that at length too. And I think we're all pretty much in alignment on that issue as well.
Agreed.
Good. So then, what? So we have the document that Renfield created, and we also have this solidity thing. I think those are the biggest opportunities. So we should figure out. So first, do we want to consider solidity at all, given sort of what happened, and if so, how do we consider it in a proposal then, since we have to wait for 7 days, and hopefully the withdrawal feature is out before then. But yes, so let's put up the scenario. We want to post a proposal as soon as possible, because we want to be ready to deploy them as soon as we can withdraw the funds. So in this proposal, if we wanted to post this tonight, if we wanted to add Solidex as an opportunity, how would we do that, given that we don't know until 7 days, whether it makes sense or not. Like, what would happen if people voted for Solid X, and in 7 days we find out that they still have issues and haven't figured out how to solve the voting thing. What we do then?
My instinct. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, so yeah, go ahead.
My instinct around that is that this all got put on pause by a sort of dramatic 7 days that we didn't account for, which is sort of disappointing because I like the idea of getting the proposal out right away so that in, say, approximately 5 to 7 days, we were ready to act. But we can't actually give any definitive answer to the community about what it's going to look like in 7 days. I don't know how we could ask them to vote on that option that is unknown, that we ourselves don't know how it'll go until then, unless you felt confident describing that in a manner as, here we have these other strategies, we think these will earn about this or that, solidly is a thing we like. We don't know what it's going to look like. Would you prefer that instead? Or maybe are you giving the yield team the authority to pursue the one that makes the most sense in the moment? I think we want to be careful about expanding any kind of scope of that, but how else could we ask them to approve us to make a decision on a thing that is currently unknown until we ourselves evaluate it? What do you think about that?
I mean, I fully agree. I couldn't sign off on, putting Treasury funds into, this cluster F situation that we've seen, where we don't know if there was any kind of foul play involved, or if it's just that it's so nascent, and then you wonder what other bugs might exist. These are Treasury funds we're talking about here. Not some kind of degen stack. So, I would think that if we're all really interested still and solidly, we wait the 7 days and look for confirmation that this was just a hiccup. And we've waited this long. Another 7 days, if this looks like a really powerful strategy, isn't that big a deal, but it's questionable at this point. To try to move forward on anything and propose it to the community, given what we've seen.
It's also not clear if 7 days will be enough time to know that answer. So hopefully it is. I'm hoping in 7 days we have the answer. I'm hoping SolidX stays solid. I'm hoping that's a place where we can put some funds or is a great option, but we won't know that for sure. And we might start the clock ticking on the vote now, knowing that we might not know that at that time. I know we did talk at some point, again, using DeFi Whiskey's early, here I see working groups in small ways forming a DAO 2.0. He did talk about having small authority given by the community to make certain decisions. And I think one of those aspects we did talk about this yield group is moving between different farms that make the most sense. I think we need to determine internally before we propose this, if moving, say, funds from Badger, hypothetically, to Solidly or to SolidX, is that within the scope that we think we designed this working group for, and does the community agree? Because if that's the case, if we're just trying to say, we're trying to get 10% to 20%, let's say we put it at Badger, we're getting 15, we determine that SolidX is getting 25-ish, we think it's a better idea, we also support that move. That might fall into the kind of authority that the community has granted us, or that we'll propose on this particular move, and then that could be determined after the fact, or not. But it's weird for me saying, will you guys just approve that particular option, like Liberty said, now with it being unknown? Max, what do you think about that, as far as that limited scope, but this possibly falling under that umbrella?
I think it's gonna. I think we're sometimes gonna need to make decisions that would be bad if we sort of had to make a vote and wait a week to get it resolved.
Yeah, I agree. I think the vote is to grant the discretionary authority to make a certain subset of decisions independently, right?
Yeah, but then we have to. Okay, so say that we give discretion to the yield group, but all the actions have to be pre-approved. So say that the community approves that we could deposit it into Curve, we could deposit it into Badger, we could deposit it into Solidly. So we could make some kind of hybrid model where there's like a pre-approved list of actions, and the yield group chooses to work within those pre-approved options to get the best yield. That's because maybe those three, say there's three options, A, B, and C, and sometimes A is better than B, and sometimes B is better than C, etc. And so we could move between those when it was fitting without having to make a vote each time. That might be an option. That's sort of a more flexible way of doing it. But then which list of actions that we would approve? I mean, there might be some controversy. Say we propose 5 options. Will the community accept all of these 5 options? Maybe the community just wants to accept 4 out of 5. Okay, I guess we could make I guess we could have a vote, and you would just click approve on those that you approve of and not, and does the majority approve whichever options the majority approves of, then those would get added. I guess, yeah, you could solve that voting thing out. So
what if it wasn't quite so discrete in individual options? Because A is sometimes better than B, and sometimes B is better than C. But what about L that comes along? Like maybe this solidly opportunity would have come along while we already were stewarding the funds, and it looked like a better option. Again, kind of Ren partner-ish, quality outfit, right? We're not going to some fly-by-night farm. It fits the criteria of the kind of places we would farm. That seems like the sort of scenario that I would like to, if we could, propose from the get-go, that in the limited set of how we're going to use these funds, it's going to be amongst these sort of, I don't know, almost like blue chip like options, if that makes sense. Like, I think it might make sense than trying to do our best to list the very specific scenarios that could occur, get those approved, and then that's that. Because I think at some point we want to check back in with the community. Here's a report. Here's what we've done. Here's what's happened with the funds. They need to continue to, I guess, have a proper sentiment about that, or at some point another vote. But as far as these are the specific actions or the specific places, unless I guess that list is big enough that we don't have to worry about the other one coming along. Does that make sense? I see us wanting to request a certain amount of authority to do what we would describe in the proposal is to steward the funds to a yield place of these options. In the meantime, while they're not being used for other things, at some point a proposal could come along to take some funds and apply those again to a funding round. But in the meantime, we want a certain amount of latitude to do what the community said they were comfortable with to do it. But I don't know how tight we want to tie that to, I don't know, a couple of places.
Or Renfield, I think I see 3 potential options for yield ops discretionary powers that could be proposed. There's full discretion saying these are the strategies we like, but we would not be limited to them in the search for the best yield for the community fund. There's partial discretion saying we will stick only to these strategies that we've outlined, but we'll rebalance as needed. And then there would be a no discretion option, which is we only stick to X, Y, or Z strategies and only rebalance under such circumstances. I think probably it would be somewhere in the middle. I think what most people would probably get behind in the community is knowing what the potential strategies could be, and getting that list agreed upon. And if we can do that, that would probably be acceptable. But I would think it's going to be pretty difficult for a brand new group to expect the community to grant it full discretion to invest funds in whatever comes up that looks attractive.
Yeah, I guess I think I mean less than we can go do whatever with these funds, and more, here are some very specific examples of the types of things. So, for example, we want to apply these funds to a partner like Badger where we expect to get a return of around this amount. But what if there's another Ren partner that's similar that we haven't considered in that regard? What if we took them to Convex directly? Did we need to have thought of Convex to put it into the proposal to be a place where we would have deployed the funds, even though Badger uses Convex? Does that make sense? I'm almost thinking about, could we use some principles around the somewhat, it's not Wild West here with the funds. We're trying to be reasonable with them, but could we describe that in principles and examples rather than discrete exact actions that can't be changed, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to anticipate the situation that comes up where there's an opportunity to move some funds in what is the same principle. Like, again, maybe it's over to Convex directly because we think they offer some different, I don't know, pool. But we can't do that, and we have to take it to a vote, and then that becomes, I don't know, it becomes opportunity missed. It becomes, I don't know. Yet still having times for the community to check in and make sure they approve of what we're doing with the funds in general, which should likely be public and, transparent. Thoughts?
So do you foresee that we we wouldn't have time for a 4 day vote to add something to the approved list? So say there's a new opportunity on Convex, would it be too devastating if we just made a vote that took 4 days to see if the community approved it?
Oh, I see. You mean more like just adding another location where we might deploy the funds, not we would now like the community's approval to pursue the same strategy over. It'd be more like, hey, everyone, do you mind if we add Convex to the list?
Yeah.
Like, I guess that seems reasonable.
Yeah, I mean,
So for now, the funds would only be deployed at the places that we would propose from the get-go. But in the future,
if in the future something new comes up, we just make a quick vote. Does the community approve that this Convex thing? It looks better that we do it on Convex directly. Does the community approve it? We add it, so we add it in the list of approved ones, and we don't change. We could remove, like the community could actively remove something if they think something isn't safe anymore. But we can assume that the list would grow over time. So the community has trust in us executing within this growing opportunity set or whatever.
yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm trying to put my head in DeFi Whiskey, again, our early conversations with him about a DAO 2.0 working team and the kind of latitude that it would have and not. And I don't picture us having much more latitude than that, but I'm hoping we don't bake in much less, if that makes sense.
I mean, this way would be a way that the authority grows over time in a safe way. So if we work
like
if we work from the approved list method, then it would just grow over time. The community would trust. If everything goes well, I mean, the trust would go up and the approved list would expand because community trusts us to execute within this frame. And so then,
I like that.
That would probably also then, flow into other directions. Yeah, we can now add this new type of activities to what the yield group is allowed to do. So it might not just be, whatever. Like it might be
This would also
trading and
satisfy
swapping
your
assets.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a good point. This would also satisfy your initial question here, which was, how do we make a proposal to the community that involves SolidX when it's not currently known? So, Liberty, you and I had the same thought earlier about how we wouldn't want to make a proposal about an unknown thing. Would that now better fit into it in the context of the conversation we just had, that here are some examples of yield farming opportunities we might pursue at, say, Convex, at Badger, at SolidX, if it seems to fit the right thing, but currently we don't have enough information about that. Does that seem proper?
I think the main thing would be to make sure that any platform is pre-approved and that we don't expect the group to have the latitude to pick a new platform, so some new platform that came up without pre-approval. But maybe we could give examples of convex strategies or curve strategies or YFI strategies or whatever, so that the platform itself is not a surprise, and then just put some sort of thesis behind what the activities in those platforms are going to be. And maybe
sense.
a new pool comes up that takes puts a new pair of trusted assets together. That maybe we don't need to go and get that individual pool approved, but we certainly wouldn't want some new platform to come up and it was never approved or thought of or discussed, and then we lose funds on that and destroy community trust. That would be too risky.
I like it. Max, do you want to consider platforms?
Yeah, so platforms is a good way to do it, as long as a platform doesn't include a bunch of different risky strategies. So, I mean, approving Yearn, Wirearn, they have a bunch of different strategies that have different levels of risk.
Yeah, I mean something like Sushi Swap, right, has some great kind of solid opportunities and some really out there things that I don't think it would be appropriate for our community fund.
So we might have to have platform plus sort of rough strategy or something like that that covers. Okay, so we can do lending. Lending is depositing into liquidity pool. That's okay. Lending is okay, but say leverage. No, we don't. The community hasn't approved leverage. We don't want to degen with our.
Yeah, at this time. Yeah. Maybe in the
Or what
future, who
about
knows? But we
algorithmic
would go to them
stablecoins?
at that time.
Yeah, we might have to do some kind of framework here to figure out sort of. We don't want to overwhelm the community with too many options.
This is true.
Um,
As for algorithmic stable coins, I think there's some that I don't like and some that I do like, right? So that's even that gets into the weeds. Like, you know, recently with that talk, especially with Mitch over at Badger, it looks like Dig's kind of off right now, but their IBBTC seems really solid, and it's made up of, you know, a bunch of RAN assets to some regard. Um, but yeah, I like the idea of platforms, but with with principles that we're applying, like you said, not jumping into degen DeFi stuff at this leverage stuff at this point. Do you want to consider the actual platforms? Do we want to make a list? Is that something that you'll need that before the proposal, right?
yeah, the actual. I mean,
And oh, Marlon's making. I don't know if you guys are keeping chat on the community call chat. He's making providing very good insights on sort of like filtering the platform. I'm pretty much what you guys said, filtering the platform and kind of providing this rough overdraft to the community on, hey, you know, this is sort of what we want. These are the do's and the don'ts, so that we don't overwhelm them, but also we can have some rails, right, for everybody's safety and comfort. So overall, I mean, I'm fully supportive of where this is heading.
okay, but yeah, this simplifies things. Then we can make a proposal where we just which of these does the community approve, and then we can work within those that the community approves. So they could approve solidly Badger curve, and then whatever happens, then we in the Yule group we just discuss and figure out what's the best at the current time.
How do we vote to approve those or not approve those? Is it like above 50% on any given one approves it, and below a 50% vote on any given one doesn't?
Wait, I have to look at the options.
List them all with a yes/no option, right? For each, perhaps.
Ye- um,
Like if 90% of the people voted no, we don't want you to put the funds over at XYZ, then that's clear. I'm just wondering how we get to that via the vote. Yeah, yes, no, and a majority. You know what I mean. Like, so there's some discussions around figuring that out, I would think.
I mean, one way is to just make a separate proposal for each, and then people just vote yes or no.
That makes sense.
It's less.
Break it out.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not as elegant as doing everything in one vote. But let me see what I can do.
I think that would be fine.
I think we'll also want to
We're gonna
put
have-
core principles to a vote, and there may be some difference. You know, I tend to be on the conservative side, much more than most degens out in the cryptoverse. And it'd be interesting to see where the community comes down on that. You know, personally, I tend to shy away from algorithmic stablecoins entirely. You know, missing out on all the fun 20% gains on Anchor, because I think they're all destined to fail. But you know, that might be just my elder millennial thinking, being stuck in the old age. Who knows? But we should get some clarity on principles. You know, as the Yield Ops group navigates these platforms that will be approved.
Agreed. Yeah, there's some fun stuff out there. I think like Element could potentially be a great option with a fixed yield. Not necessarily for everything, but you know, as we diversify it and figure it out, and take different angles. And who knows, maybe we develop better into our financial acumen ultimately, and we put some into something crazy in the future, like 5%. I don't know. But for now, I think we stay pretty straightforward. You know, blue chips, convex, badger, urn, element. I think solid X is something we would propose here, but we're not yet sure if that's the right answer depending on their situation.
Are we going to present any risk rating on this when we put it out there for the community?
How do you mean?
I mean, there's a certain level of risk involved in all of them. I'm not sure like how we're going to present that risk to them as well, in case something happens later on and people come with the blame game.
Do you mean as a general principle, or do you mean the difference in risk between taking it to convex directly and taking it to curve directly? Because I'm not sure how to
Yeah,
evaluate that.
Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
easier
exactly.
to just make, risk against just holding it? I mean, there's risk against one versus another. That's just a matter of how much ROI we're getting. So I don't think that's something that the yield group should be handling. But the risk that something gets hacked or something, that's what I guess the community would be more concerned about, wouldn't it? Or
Bobby, do you mean like smart contract risk and whatnot? Like making that clear to the community? Is that what you meant?
I mean, if we stick to options where there is no like any type of impermanent loss risk or anything like that, we should be okay without digging too deep into that element. Like Max says, I mean, at the end of the day, it's basically just to hold it versus putting it at work. So I guess we could skip that part.
I mean, we can have
Oh,
that
I
part.
see.
Uh, we
And
we
when it comes
can
to something like algorithmic stablecoins, that's going to have another element of risk versus just taking it as something that isn't algorithmic and not backed by anything and whatnot.
yeah we
But when
can
it comes to just
we should
yeah,
have
sorry,
some
go ahead.
we should have something like that. I mean, we don't have to compare A versus B, C, D, D. We can compare A versus just holding. So what's the risk of doing this algorithmic stablecoin staking versus just keeping our Bitcoin? um, so that I don't know how we should do sort of that in a objective way, but we could make a rough.
I mean, when it comes to the
Yeah.
when it comes to the platform risk, it can be relatively straightforward because some platforms have been around for quite some time. Like if we want to, utilize Yearn or something like that, I think the risk would be significantly lower than something like Solidly, who just came out. So we could just mention those parts. But when it comes to the specific mechanics of the strategy we're going to use, that's going to be a bit more tricky.
We could like give an A rating, a B rating, or a C rating, sort of like very risky, medium risk, low risk, and of course we might not be the best people to make that
I
evaluation.
don't
We're
think
not.
any of us are as good as a ratings agency, nor should we pretend to be.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
we should.
think
I think we should
the
just.
public debate is going to be the important thing here, is to make sure there's a lot of discussion on the threads about what all these strategies and risk factors could be. But I don't know that we all have the tools really to issue ratings per se.
And in the interest, Max, of you getting out a proposal in a short order, which if I understand you correctly, I could see you doing that almost right away, right? You want to get this going so that we have the opportunity to take action soon. Yeah, I don't know if we could get all that together, and again, or if we're qualified for it. I think we want to talk about the principles we're applying here, which is using the community fund to get a yield back, but within some margin we would describe. We want approved again, approved platforms, so we're not going crazy, right? We're going to take our money to Badger, and they have some various options, and we're going to try to make the best decision we can there, and maybe we're going to describe that into proposal within some guidelines. But I don't know if we can get any financial investment degrees by the time you want to get this proposal out. And then obviously, you know, the if the yield group is kind of making some of these decisions ultimately, I'm pretty sure we still want to do it in conversations with everyone else, right? We want to know what other people are thinking, what the community is thinking. It's not, again, we talked about in the past, not some gilded star chamber, right? We're trying to get a return on the community funds within reasonable limits. And I think we need those principles and platforms described as a part of your proposal. I don't know how much more we can get than that at this time.
And just in general, to add to Savovi's point, and I saw Marlon's comment too. I mean, all of this, right? There's always a risk. Nothing is 100% certain. So I think just a couple sentences restating the obvious for for DeFi in general. Obviously, we I think that should take care of it as far as good faith disclosure. Hey, listen, this sort of potential risk, right? Smart contract hack. I mean, we can list. We've seen them, right? Multiple platforms. So yeah, like the rating and that's a whole different ballpark. And obviously, time is of the essence. So I think a few sentences just restating the very typical risk that should really show good faith. I will believe. I don't know if other folks have feel uncomfortable with that. We just want to show intent, like good faith intent, right?
I agree with that. And to both your point and Max's point, Max, you're talking about here are the risks and they exist, and here's what they are, and here's also the risk of sitting on our funds and doing nothing. So I guess in the sake of full disclosure, like there are definitely risks. We're not trying to go wild with them, but they exist. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. As long as we're quite transparent with what the risks are, even though I mean nobody's really an expert, it should be quite okay. As long as the community has a chance to have a word, so that we just avoid any type of backfire later on if anything happens, because the risk is always there. But I do agree we shouldn't get, how to say, dwell too much into it either. And I do think we need to keep the options pretty low, so to say, not too many options. Most people don't want to read. Most people don't want to really think about it. And as I heard earlier, you were talking about 5 or 4 options. I would say even no more than 3, 2 ideally, just either A or B.
Well, don't forget, it's not just to get the proposal out with here are some options. It's actually in the future of being able to move those funds to those places, right? Like, we give say SolidX, we give say Badger, hypothetically, we have a third, but we've got maybe 2 or 3 more we think might be reasonable. I think we're trying not to cut off our hands in the ability to move these funds to reasonable places in the future that still fit the criteria or the. So I don't know. I don't know if limiting to 3 as a number on purpose limits us too much, if that makes sense. So like, what would the 3 be, and what are we missing out on by not having the others? I guess
Yeah, no, I mean, in the
I guess
future, it's fine. I
devil's
was just
advocate,
thinking
we
that.
can always add them, like Max
Yeah, yeah,
said.
of
We can always
course.
go back to the community and say, hey, do you guys mind if we add Yearn directly that we didn't add back at the proposal?
Exactly. Yeah, no, no. My point was more just now. So basically, at the moment, most people are concerned about this whole Sudley thingy. So I'm guessing that that would be one option, and then we would have another option which is not on the Phantom chain, and something that is more robust that's been around for a while with this Badger or any other ones that you guys want to. Even 3 would be fine as well. I'm just saying, like, the first vote, in my opinion, should be quite how to say, limited in terms
Modest.
of amount of information. Sorry, go ahead, Renfield.
No, just like modest. Like the first vote you're saying should maybe not be so extravagant.
Yeah, yeah, just keep it simple to some degree so that people can, like, the more people we get in to vote and actually involve themselves, the bigger the chance they stay around, rather than having a complicated vote and then it just turns out that it's basically us that vote because it's just too much to think about for them. It might feel later on for people that it's already too late to join the conversation and whatnot. The more people we can get in from the beginning might be beneficial for us later on, as they feel like they were with us from the get-go and understand how things work early on and so forth.
That does make sense. I like the engagement aspect. We might want to go out there and chat people up. You know, here's what we're doing. What do you think? Here's the proposal. Tell me your thoughts. If we did keep it to such a small list, Max, would you see those potentially going on the main proposal themselves, or if the list is that small, would you still see them as individual votes, and maybe we end up with 1 or 2 rather than 3 or 4?
So which were the options?
The difference between, let's say we make a proposal and it says we might take this money to Badger, to SolidX, to Element, rather than we propose a small list. Here's a separate vote, up or down, for these 3 providers. I guess I'm saying if the list is so small of the ones that we might propose, would you still see setting them as separate voting options as the way to take that, or would a small set of options all come together in the one proposal and one vote?
I mean, it depends on how we want to do it in the future. So it's the same sort of process that we use.
I see.
I mean,
So it might make sense doing the individual votes,
yeah,
so that later we would follow the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's in just general politics. I don't know lawmaking, but sometimes they do aggregate laws into like the same vote, don't they? Or is that something that they do in the U.S.? Just like
Yeah, there's like 3 there's like 3 a year, and it has everything in them.
yeah, so they all just they vote in aggregate yes for all of them, right? Or yes or no for all of them. So yeah, so in that voting session, they're choosing to approve all of them in that list or not?
I think they carve away an ad as they go through negotiation. But they're the actual deciders. That's different. We're the proposers, and the deciders are other folks.
Okay.
If it was all the deciders together, then maybe you would carve in and out, and then make the vote.
Okay.
I like your point, though, of setting it up how we want to do it in the future. In the future, we might say, we would like to add this other place. Do you all approve? So maybe setting that up in the meantime
I
would
mean,
make
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I think it just might be easier if we have 3 separate votes: approve, yes or no for each of them. Because we don't know, like
Roger.
they might approve. Community. I mean, we can guess what the community would approve, and it might not be controversial, like having them all in the same. But we don't know, and we can't make assumptions that
makes sense.
everyone approves of all.
I have
the
some.
three. Yeah.
I have some Algo, and have recently been, doing their little thing where it's staked in a governance aspect. One thing they do on their votes, and we're not the same makeup, but they describe that in this vote, the Algorand Foundation tends to like this option over here, but you guys are all open to vote for however you'd like. And sometimes if I don't feel super strongly enough about that issue, I might say, I think the Algorand Foundation is doing a good job of running their community. I'm going to go with the vote that they offered. So we might offer several, but we might also include like, hey, it's up for you guys to vote, but we're proposing, we would like to take in these initial 4 places, but you guys have the opportunity to vote down any of them if you so feel that way. Does that make sense? Offering a little bit of potential, it's not just a clear, it's not just a antiseptic proposal that no one feels strongly about either way. It's something that we had conversations about and put together, and we think it's the right thing, but here is the vote. Please vote your conscience. Does that make sense?
I mean, by default, all of the ones that we add to the vote, they're already the ones that we think make sense. But yeah,
It's true.
we could. I mean, we could
Yeah.
make it explicit that we looked over the ones we think give the best ROI in terms of relative to risk. Do you approve these ones? So I mean, we can add that, make it explicit that we didn't take this out of the hat, that we actually.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like that. Do you approve of this proposal we have? Because again, it's not the top 10. It's not the most popular. It's again, some level of partners, connection, reliability.
Yeah,
I
and
think
Bitcoin.
a certain level of. Yeah.
because we have so much Bitcoin. So yeah, we should do that. We should just then today, not to take too long on this call. So yeah, should we? Which are the ones we want to have up?
Can I propose Badger, Solid X? I think we should add Solidly, in case that's a move you had talked earlier as moving them over there. I think Element might be a good option. They seem fairly reliable, even less risky in the fact that they have fixed yields, but it's not an option. We don't have to go that direction if we think that's, I don't know, strange. I think DeFi Whiskey is working, you said, closely with them.
Yeah, I think he's been hosting calls with them. I think he's like working in the DAO or something. Curves well.
I think Curve and Convex make sense to add to the list. I think we're getting away from Sabobi's small list proposal, but I also think those are great options that should we determine we need to move stuff there, I think we might want that latitude, but I also see the value in potentially going back to the community and asking, do you mind if we add Curve directly to the list? I guess I'm in the middle of those two decisions. Do we propose all 6, or do we just try and narrow it down to 3 and ask for more later? But
I mean, some of these are so like small and or easy for the community to digest. Most of the community knows what Curve is. They know what Badger is, so they would very likely agree, and it wouldn't be a huge mental load for them to vote on those. So it would be the new exotic ones that would be challenged. So as long as we don't have too many exotic options. So the exotic ones here is SolidX/Solidly, and Element, I guess, just because they're pretty new. But if you're saying it's fixed yield, so that's pretty, I mean, simple to grok to understand.
yeah, like we could move a chunk over there, take that yield immediately, and have that money to invest, or even that could be a way to do a funding round. We moved some money over there, took some out of it, used that to fund something, and then the rest matures back into our principal. There's options, and they seem like a very professional outfit. It seems like there's all risk everywhere, of course, but it feels like there's less risk when we're not letting it ride on where those percentages might go up and down, and that might not be where we decide to put any of the money at all. But it seems like an option that we might at some point say we'd like to take 10% over here and put it on this fixed yield thing and earn. Anyway, they just seem like a reliable one. But if the community voted that down, that would be that, and fine.
I mean,
So, Bobby, are you fine with? There's 6 on that list. They're all pretty, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I do agree that they should be quite easy to. Well, I hope so at least. I think the community will be able to digest that pretty easily.
Hypothetically,
Element,
in the
like
future.
Mike said, like
Sorry,
Element
go
is the only one I think because it's relatively new. But the other ones, I'm pretty sure everyone knows quite well. Yeah, I mean, it should be fine. It should be fine.
Maybe.
Solid
All
X and
right.
Solid X.
Let me propose that we don't include Element at this time. Although again, I think it's safer. It's a little less risky than the other ones. But if we think it's risky from the sense of a vote, and we're making it too, I don't know. Maybe I'm too in my head about it. But to your point, I don't want to present the community with too much info that they don't want to digest and they don't feel invested enough, because it gets kind of wild.
I mean, Solid X and Solidly has been quite topic lately, so everyone should be quite updated on that one. Badger has been very close to Rent for a long time, so that one should be pretty obvious as well. Curve as well. Convex is kind of related to Curve, so I think most people know anyway. So the only one would be Element that I'm not sure about, but I mean, if it's just one, I don't see why the community wouldn't be able to just go read an article about it. Maybe we can put in links to each of those projects where they can find useful information as well, and just make it easy for them. But yeah, it should be fine.
Max, what more do you need to move forward?
Seems like we resolved like all the questions I have. Let's see. I mean, I'll.
So if I understood it correctly, are we going to present these with the APIs that we're basically aiming for, together with like a brief risk rating? Like, what information are we going to give the community with this?
Yeah, I'll I'll make a public document so people can help and fill out some details.
That's a tough one since those numbers just wildly fluctuate so much. Like Badger's numbers are up and down. I keep updating them on that sheet just in case anybody looks at it. I want it to be as current as possible, but they've changed several times.
Yeah, because I'm
Yeah, I
guessing
don't.
people are going to be mostly concerned about how fast they can grow the fund and then basically go for the highest API most of the time. But we don't really know what the API is going to be.
I think we're proposing that the yield team would be able to deploy those funds following the principles we've proposed in a strategy that makes the most sense, that isn't too wildly risky but returns some yield, right? So the the treasury team might decide that at SolidX we'd rather put it into this pool than that pool because it exposes us to something else rather than this, and it might not earn as high of a percentage. Like it might be that
Wait.
Badger earns us a higher percentage, but we want to take advantage of SolidX at this point, right? So I think I tend to agree with you. I kind of want to go after what seems to give us the most and make the yield pool the largest, but there could be some. There was definitely talk about potentially doing tri-crypto because it exposes us more to Ethereum and then USDT and then Badger's other token. So I don't think the principal will purely be what is the largest yield, although I can see some value in that.
I mean, there's we have to figure out if these, maybe not something we have to do in this proposal coming up now. If we're just approving platforms, but asset allocation and all of that. There's a lot of sort of more higher level things a treasury needs how a treasury is managed. We have to think about, should we reallocate funds, whatever, and should we how should we have it split up in different strategies at once? How is all of that managed? Is there like a meta strategy that the community has to approve? There's more work we have to do here.
Well, this is ongoing
Yeah.
for quite some time, whether it's us or others that take the torch or not. Yeah, there's much to do.
Yeah, I mean that's the partly why I wanted to keep it simple as well, because at the end of the day, one option is just to, so now this whole Solid thing has started, and some people are quite, feeling quite impatient to just get things moving. How much time do we want to spend on, agreeing on strategies and all that internally before we even present to community, which might take time as well? Or do we just want to come with one strategy and say, hey, this is the opportunity now. Do you want us to move forward, or should we, go back and lay out different strategies for you guys to approve? I'm not sure. We could just turn the vote into something like that as well, just a yes or no option.
Did you speak to any of that in the yield vote conversation in the multi-sig, Max? Probably not a lot of strategy, but the talks we've had leading up to now, again going back to DeFi Whiskey's initial impetus at us to kind of create these working groups in the right manner. It's we're trying to make the pile bigger until it's deployed. I think we would treat Solidly and SolidX as one of those options to make the pile bigger, not as an outreach to the thing we're trying to support, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're trying to make a proposal and grant approval to the yield team to best steward the funds to make the pile bigger in the meantime. And I think some people will disagree. You guys only got 23% back, and I think if you went with my strategy, you could have gotten 25. I think there's going to be that, but
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I don't know if we don't want to go back to a vote to say we'd like to move it from the IBBTC pool at Badger over to the Try Crypto pool, right? We want to give the yield group the latitude to follow the principles in the proposal. Do we need to come up with those principles? Because to me, it just seems like we're trying to put these at reasonable places to make a little bit of yield.
Yeah.
I don't know. how to break
Yeah.
that down further.
Then
But maybe
like,
we should.
the community micromanaging thing, it wouldn't work just from a practical logistic. So unless it's like something extremely controversial, like the community doesn't want convex to be in the approved list anymore, then sure, then they can make a proposal about that, and then the yield group has to follow that decision.
Absolutely.
But the community, I mean, so it shouldn't be like, oh, you're just making 23% when you could have deposited everything on Terra and did some UST farming or whatever. Like we shouldn't go down that path because that's just gonna get super messy. I mean, what ifs, like you shouldn't have those kind of what ifs battles.
Are you confident describing our approach in your proposal, which I assume is coming around shortly? We're not looking to, again, Wild West this and send it out to the craziest options. Or do you need more info or a way to dial that info in to better describe that on the proposal? Like, is it clear at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll make a draft and I'll make it public so people can come in and review, and we'll give it a few days before I think we should publish it, just so we can add all the options in, and if someone has confidence to make a risk comment on it, that would be great. So it's not just me doing everything. But I get sort of, I think I have a grasp on all of that, and if you want to add some language to the draft, go ahead. It's not my proposal, it's our proposal, so definitely make a comment if we should change the language.
I think that makes sense. And again, this is the DAO early stepping up. I know that it's important to you that we transition this to the DAO rather than the core team, but I definitely appreciate your input and contribution in helping to put the proposals together, just from an expertise and someone that understands and cares about it. But yeah, it's you're in this matter representing the community, not your own thoughts or the core team's thoughts, and that seems fairly clear to me as an observer over here. So
That's great. I appreciate it. So does anyone
everything
have
else
any,
you need from this meeting?
I don't think I know. Does anyone else have any sort of thoughts that we should talk about before we close?
I just wanted to add to Renfield's point, and just in general, I think that the more we keep this to getting to a quick win. I remember DeFi's Whiskey was, and in that, the first few conversations, there was a consensus to, okay, let's get the quick win to see what needs to improve, what has to, change, evolve. I still keep on I'm monitoring this so I can then publish the governance framework, which is like long and complicated. But I'm heavily inspired by Rook's barn bridge processes as well with the DAO, and I'm kind of just, obviously that's gnarly, but I think it's important. So to me, just in general, the more specific, concise we make this with the appropriate disclosures, like Sabobi mentioned and everything, the better it's just for the DAO's growth. And I know that the core team is obviously, excited for this part of the maturity of Ren. So overall, I'm just excited to see this. And I definitely think the more we keep to a concise, quick win, probably the better in the spirit of this DAO maturing.
Yeah, and to add to your point, it will continue to grow. It'll grow in strategy. It'll grow in options. It'll grow in platforms. Our acumen around Treasury will grow. We'll add people that have more knowledge on the subject. So we can't fit it all into this proposal and make a huge win. I think we need to move forward with the simple proposal, exactly like you're describing, and in the spirit of the conversation of how these early working groups were started. That's to say seconded. Sorry, that's a little long-winded.
We're all in this together. It's amazing to see your growth, and thank you, Max, for all the initiative and leadership as a fellow community member.
Thanks, guys. Awesome. Sabobi, did you want to say something before as well, or?
Yeah, I just want to check in. So we agreed on 4 days for the voting, and when are we going to get this up? Today, tomorrow? So you're going to put up a document that we can chip in on and help you out with, and then we aim to get it up tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll put it up tomorrow because I have to add a bunch of stuff now. Assuming, I mean, I don't know how much. We'll see when it's done. Like, do we need another day or so for reviewing it, so it everyone sort of, or most people, approve the proposal, and then I maybe put it out on Saturday or Sunday, or Monday, and have it out for 4 days. Yeah, so it would be
Sounds like a good
best.
timeline.
Yeah, it would be best if we could maybe put it out on Saturday and give people 4 days, but yeah,
If
we'll
we
see.
I know we need a little time for each element here. Like we need time to review it. I think we have the right approach, but if you feel comfortable making it 7 days on the vote itself, kind of to your point in chat a day or two ago, I don't, as the very first official move here, the less shortcuts taken, potentially the better. And I know we do want to move quickly on where to put the funds, but I don't know. And that's not critical, but I'm just putting that out there as an option if there's any way to make sure this is a full vote and we want to give everybody time, and an entire week might allow that a better chance for that.
I mean, I'll check with the dev team on when exactly that feature realistically will be live in mainnet so we can withdraw. If we can't withdraw funds until late next week, then there's no point in rushing anyway.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'll check with them tomorrow or tonight when they wake up.
I guess that is to say, let's especially let's not rush if there's a potential cost to it and no gain. But if there is possibly a gain to it but still a cost, we might still, I don't know, we might just want to be serious on how we make that decision. But I'm fine either way. If you go a week or 4 days, I just wanted to put that out there as if we can take 7 and reasonably, then I think we should just, I don't know, it might allow more to get involved and won't be seen as rushing a very important decision. In context of things, our first important decision, many more will be more important later, but also fine either way. But I appreciate it.
Great. Then I'll post that tomorrow somewhere and let you guys review and comment and help polish it. And we'll try to post the proposal as soon as possible, because that part we can. There's no point in waiting on that. As soon as the proposal is ready, we should post it. So I appreciate if you guys can check in tomorrow on the document and make sure everything looks good. Help out where if I leave some comments, try to help me answer them or something. But yeah, otherwise we can
be sure to announce it or call it out or tag folks. Just make it clear.
Yep, I'll post it in the Treasury channel and tag.
Perfect.
At least the Treasury working group people. And if someone wants that title on Discord, just tell me and I'll add you. So it's an easy way to tag the relevant people. If you want to have the Treasury working group role on Discord, just let me know. All right.
Perfect. I propose we adjourn.
Yes.
All
I
right.
agree.
Good chatting, everyone.
Appreciate the insight.
Stay safe. See you
All
guys.
right, yeah, absolutely.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good stuff. Later.